Yes, this meeting will be recorded. And we can send that to you, Ms. Coffin. You're welcome. Well, I don't want to hold you up, so we're going to go on ahead and move forward. Just to introduce myself, I am Bianca Stewart Williams. I am president of the board with Dress for Success Central Virginia, and we are collaborating with Grow with Google for today's workshop, Improving Your Resume with Practical Strategies, okay? So excited to be here with you all today probably during your lunch break. And today I'll be showing you how you can improve your resume using some simple and practical strategies, okay? The slide that we're on now will go over resumes. First, we'll touch at ATS or applicant tracking systems, an important first hurdle for your resume before it even reaches recruiters. Then we'll try a quick glance resume evaluation activity. You'll look at some resumes quickly to get a sense of how formatting and errors might make a poor first impression on a hiring manager. After that, we'll dive into 4 strategies that'll make any resume better. Use professional formatting, of course, highlighting your skills and accomplishments, citing specific examples and measurable details, and tailoring your resume for the job description. For each strategy, we'll practice editing a resume. I'll share digital tips that you can make your resume writing easier. And by the end of this session, you'll be ready to create your own resume and apply these strategies to get you closer to an interview. All right. If you have any questions, this can be informal. Please enter it into the chat. And, as we go through the session, I'll be able to answer questions, okay? So let's go into the next slide. All right. So let's talk more about strategies you can use to improve your resume. Next. So let's take a minute to think about the purpose of a resume, right? How much time on average do you think an employer spends looking at a resume? You can enter in the chat. Right, not long. Some will say 5, 10 minutes, even 30 minutes. We often assume that the employer will read our resume from top to bottom, but that is rarely the case. Really, it only takes about 6 to 10 seconds looking at a resume. The goal of a resume is to showcase the skills and accomplishments you have and to make the employer want to call you in for an interview. You want to convince them that you're a good fit for the position that you're applying for, and that they don't need to know everything you've ever done to accomplish that. Stay on this slide. So many use applicant tracking systems, or what they call ATS, as a starting point to consider job candidates, okay? The ATS is a type of software that sorts through resumes and applications, selecting which ones to pass on to a human recruiter. ATS helps recruiters by streamlining the review process and allows them to quickly and easily track, review, and identify applicants. For candidates, this means that if you want a recruiter to ever see your resume, you need to make sure that it gets through this system. These systems work by scanning resumes for certain keywords and years of experience in the field based on the job description and the requirements. But unfortunately, ATS systems can look at a resume and make a thoughtful, or it can make a nuanced decision as an individual candidate, the way reviewing over them the way a human can. So they might eliminate resumes that do qualify for the position. Okay. And that really can be done by from formatting. Next slide. Okay. So here are a few tips to help you make sure that your resume makes it through an ATS and into the hands of a human recruiter. The image on the right, as you can see, is a resume that meets the requirements I'm about to mention. First, we're looking at the file type. If ATS systems are best able to read docs and PDF files, okay? If you create a resume using Google Docs, you can download it as a docs or a PDF. Keep the formatting simple, okay? Since ATS scans resumes for keywords, it can be confused by fancy formatting, graphics, and tables. So we want to eliminate that by keeping the formatting relatively simple. Later in this workshop, I'll show you some Google Doc templates which all work with the ATS systems, okay? Use keywords from the job description. ATS systems are shown the job listing in order to learn which words to seek out in resumes, okay? So when ATS detects those keywords, relevant skills, and years, formatting and experience in your resume, it will flag you as a qualified candidate. For this reason, you should adjust your resume to reflect the words used in the job listing. The closer they are, the more the ATS will pick up on selecting you as a candidate. And avoid headers and footers. Many ATS systems can't read headers and footers well at all. So you want to make sure you put any critical information like your contact info. Don't put any critical information like your contact info in a header or footer because it will not track. Okay. Now that you understand how ATS works, you can make choices that will ensure your resume gets through applicant tracking systems and in front of a human recruiter. For the rest of this workshop, we'll be focusing on how to impress that recruiter. Next. Okay, so let's start a challenge. Imagine for a moment that you're a hiring manager looking for someone to fill a position, okay? You know what you're looking for, but you're busy and there are a million things on your to-do list. So now you're trying to get through a large stack of resumes before lunch in 30 minutes. These resumes have already made it through the ATS. Now we'll do an activity to help you get a sense of how resumes make a first impression. For this activity, make sure you have a pen and paper nearby or a digital notes document you can access easily, or you can just enter in on the chat. First, we'll look at a sample job description. Then I'm going to show you 6 examples of resumes. You'll have about 7 seconds to look at each resume and process it. For each one you see, write down one word that describes the resume and then decide with a quick yes or no if you'd like to spend more time on it. Then we'll move on to the next resume. You can write down your word or yes, no on a piece of paper in front of you or on a digital note, so in the chat. Here's the job description along with some of the skills you might be looking for. Okay, I'm gonna read the job description aloud. We seek a high performer to join our sales team. The successful candidate will be a responsible, motivated sales associate with proven experience. This person will manage the entire sales cycle, identifying sales needs, locating and expanding new markets, designing and delivering sales presentations, and presiding over negotiations. To meet or exceed personal and departmental sales goals, you'll need excellent customer service skills, an entrepreneurial worldview, business acumen, and a business sales philosophy. Okay, so keep this description in mind. And now we're going to review over these 6 resumes. Okay, so if you're watching on a smaller screen, maybe like a phone, you might want to maximize the window or make it larger so it's easier to scan the resumes. But remember that you're not reading through the resumes completely at this stage. You're just taking a quick scan and identifying whether or not you want to move with this applicant, okay? You don't need to remember all the details. In fact, looking at the resumes quickly will help you mimic what hiring managers experience as they work. Just a quick scan of your resume and jot down the first impressions. The purpose of this activity is for you to look at the resumes through the eyes of the hiring manager so that you can get a better craft, so you can better craft your own. Remember, you're writing down one objective that describes the resume, plus a yes or no on whether you want to spend more time looking at it, okay? So here we go. Next. This is Asha's resume. Write down a word or two about your impressions on this resume. Or you could put it in the chat. All right, next resume. So next is Adam's resume. Write down your quick impression of it. Next resume. Here is Titus's resume. Write down your impressions in a word or two. Next resume. And now it's Jason's resume. Next resume. And we have Liana's resume. Next one. And finally, Abraham's resume. Okay. Out of all of those, which would you move on to interview? Three. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Let's move on to talk about strategies you can improve your resume, right? Next slide. While there's no one right way to write a resume. There are many different resume styles and formats that might be appropriate for the job you're applying for. Today, we'll focus on 4 key things you can do to strengthen your resume. Choosing a professional format, highlighting your skills and accomplishments, cite specific examples and measurable details, and tailor your resume to the job description. We'll return to these sample resumes as examples throughout the workshop. Okay, next slide. We'll start with choosing a professional format. Next slide. The format you choose for your resume may depend on the job you apply for. A traditional resume, like Asha's resume on the left, has a standard white background and a classic font and organizational structure. For a more creative field, you may want to submit a resume with a less traditional design and format, like Abraham's on the right. The resume uses more colors overall and has a unique organizational structure, including career details in 2 separate columns, as you see. Next slide. So, as you saw in the quick glance activity, there were many different ways to write a resume, and none of them are incorrect. As you reviewed each resume, you most likely noticed several issues that hiring managers also see during their reviews to an interview. One of the most important things to remember is that your resume should be professional, organized, and easy to read. Having a well-designed resume that is free of errors is extremely important in making a good first impression. If a hiring manager is only spending a few seconds on each resume to decide which ones are worth a second look, you don't want them to be thrown off or get a bad impression just because of formatting and spelling errors. Here are some key attributes to employ when creating your resume. Be sure to include wide margins and a lot of white space. White space is the space on the page that isn't filled with text or graphics. It gives the reader's eyes a rest. Use simple, readable language. Use clear headings and choose an appropriate font like Arial or Times New Roman, which generally most all document software has. The image on the right shows Asha's resume. It is professionally formatted with clear headings, a plain font, and wide margins. Next. Contrast this with Jason's resume, which is packed full of information, and not all of it is relevant to the job position. Click. Right. While Jason may have selected a legible font type, the lack of white space makes the resume as a whole difficult to read. There's no break for the eyes, so the person reading it may feel overwhelmed and distracted rather than impressed. Click again. Each of you is multi-talented with different experience and interests. There's so much that you could add to a resume, but it's important to only include details that are relevant to the position that you're applying for. Click again. It's usually not necessary to include additional links to social media profiles or websites. Some exceptions, if you're applying to a position in social media management, you might include links to show that you have a strong social media following. Some designers, writers, and artists may have a website that includes a portfolio of their work, which can be helpful. The key here is to include links that are relevant to the job only. Click again. The most noticeable challenge with this resume is how difficult it can be read. Too much information or crowded text can discourage an employer from reading your resume before you even review your experience, before they even review your experience. Okay? And next we have Adam's resume. On the other hand, is easier to read than the previous example. There's such sufficient white space and text is not crowded. But readable white space should be balanced with important information. Click on it. As you can see with this resume, it doesn't include any details about the responsibilities or accomplishments of his previous jobs. Don't assume that the employer reading your resume knows exactly what you did at each job just based on the job title. You also don't want to miss an opportunity to highlight your successful projects. expanded responsibilities, and measurable accomplishments. You still don't have to include every job you've ever done, especially if it isn't relevant to the position you're applying for. If you've been in one career for a long time, add examples and specific details to describe projects and accomplishments. We'll talk about more of this in a moment. And sometimes your work experience isn't the only area of your resume where you can showcase the value of the accomplishments. Be creative. Think about certifications, awards, volunteer work, part-time jobs, and continuing education classes that make you more qualified for the position you're seeking, and including those on your resume, okay? Next slide. You may have found some colors in Titus's resume distracting. Depending on your industry, it may be acceptable for you to use an accent color. However, too many different colors can be distracting to an employer. Also, some of the font types in this resume might be difficult to read. It's best to stick with one easily readable font type throughout the resume. Click. Depending on your geographical location and the type of job you're applying to, a photo on the resume may or may not be standard practice. Some parts of South America, Asia, Africa, and Europe require candidates to include a photo on the resume. And if Titus was applying for a modeling or acting role, a photo might be appropriate. However, even if Titus was applying to a job in one of those regions, he should include a clearer photo. Click. And did you notice any of the typos in this resume? Make sure you take the time to review your resume for grammatical errors and typos to show an employer that you're detail-oriented. Next slide. Designing your resume may be a bit intimidating. You may have many design skills, or perhaps you don't feel comfortable formatting digital documents. Fortunately, you don't need design skills to create a professional resume. You can choose from a variety of pre-built Google resume templates that have already done all that for you. Templates are like a pattern you use as a guide. They provide some design elements and formatting that you can use as a starting point for your projects. They also help you keep font sizes and styles consistent throughout your document. Google Docs offers lots of free professional resume templates to get you started. The layout, fonts, colors are different for each template, but they all contain the same basic information that you'll need for a resume. Your contact information, skills, experience, and education, as well as accomplishments or projects you've completed. After you select a template, you can customize the document from there. To access these templates, make sure you're signed into your Google account. Then go to drive.google.com. Click New, select Docs, then select from a template. You could click. Now you can choose a template you like. After the workshop, take a look at these templates and think about which might work best for you. Some of the templates might lend themselves to specific industries. You may want to check with a colleague about standard styles in your field. For example, a creative person like a graphic designer might use more creative resume template to show off their skills even before the interview. We won't go into each template today, but feel free to explore them on your own as you put our other strategies to use. Whether or not you use the template to design your resume, you should at least cover the following categories: education, contact information, skills, and work experience. Next slide. Okay, now that we've addressed formatting and first impressions, let's talk about the next strategy you can use to make your resume more professional: highlighting your skills and accomplishments. Notice this says highlight, not list. You don't need to include everything, okay? So your resume is not a comprehensive list of all the jobs you've had, or even a list of all the things you've been involved in for the last decade. Your goal is to showcase your skills and accomplishments you have, and to make your employer want to call you in for an interview. You want to convince them that you're a good fit for the job, and for the job that you're applying for, and that they don't need to know everything you've ever done to accomplish that. But hiring managers do want to see the skills and accomplishments that are most relevant to the job you're applying for. And they'll also want to know the most recent work experience you have. Put the most recent work experience first. Don't be afraid to eliminate jobs from your resume that are not relevant to the one you're applying for. Your work experience list does not need to be exhaustive. It needs to highlight the skills and accomplishments you have that are relevant to the job you're applying for. At the same time, if you've done other activities like part-time jobs, volunteer work that are closely related to the job you're applying for, and you've used to develop skills that will also help at that job, include them. If you need to account for a gap in your work history, volunteer work can also be good to show, and that you're active in developing your skills, even if you weren't employed. If you're starting a new career and haven't worked in the field before, examine all of the job experience or life experience that you've done and make connections whenever you can. Next slide. Okay, so here's a quick challenge. Let's practice deciding which opportunities you might include on your resume and which you should eliminate. Imagine you're applying for a sales representative position you saw earlier. And in the past, you've had the work experiences listed on the left: wait staff, cashier, volunteer work, bank teller, babysitting, and freelance. Take 2 minutes to review and think about these positions. If you like, share in the comment box which jobs you would include in this resume. And as you're working on that, it may help to also consider which specific projects or measurable details you might include from these positions to show that the past experience is relevant to the job you're applying for. So you can put that in the chat. Would anyone like to share what jobs they included? Okay, bank teller, cashier. That's a good one. Wait staff only because it relates to customer service, volunteer work, if it relates to perhaps freelance blogging, as it relates to a role. Good job, Ms. Coffin. Mm-hmm. Cashier, bank teller, wait staff. Okay. Definitely tapping into that customer service. Thank you, Joan. Okay. Even though most of yours are the same, but everybody has a different opinion on writing, and that's okay. um, so let's talk about some of the skills we could have pulled from each of these positions and how you might include them on your resume for the sales rep position. For the wait staff position, for a wait staff position, I'm sorry, you may have been tasked with upselling customers you were waiting on. Anything from telling them about desserts to suggesting specific accompaniments to their meal could be viewed as an upsell activity. As a cashier, you're likely engaged with customers for the majority of the workday, a skill important to a sales rep. And let's say you raise funds as part of your volunteer work. This experience could be viewed as being very similar to a sales rep. As a bank teller, you're likely to learn the details of every product or service the bank offers. This is a skill specifically included in the sales representative job description. A babysitting job showcases responsibility and multitasking. Freelance blogging work could be required. You negotiate rates for your job with publications or clients. Negotiation skills are important for any sales position, right? Next slide. Okay, what you should or shouldn't include in your resume is entirely subjective. Some people may have chosen to include babysitting, while others may think it doesn't apply. It all depends on the skills you use during that job and how you describe these skills afterward. If you decide not to include some of the jobs or experience you've had, you could save them to mention in an interview if you could make a connection to the job you're applying for, or you might just leave them out entirely. The main point of this exercise is to show you that you can choose to include or exclude any jobs depending on your situation. Any of these could be included in the sales representative resume. If you highlight applicable skills like responsibility, punctuality, customer service, professional attitude, dependable attendance, etc. Also, any can be excluded if you've been in the workforce for a long time and more professional work experience and have more professional work experience to cover. Or if you mention the experiences without following with relevant skills. So no, there's no wrong answer. Next. Many people need to take time off from the workforce for a variety of reasons, including caring for loved ones, furthering their education, or loss of work due to an economic downturn. Think about COVID. If you've had a gap in your work history for any reason, whether for months or years, you might want to highlight the education or volunteer work you took part in during that time. You can also describe the experience and skills you've gained through managing a household, learning a new language, or culture if you've traveled, or anything else to show your growth even when you weren't employed. Another possibility to consider is using a different resume format called a functional resume, like the one shown here. In a functional resume, you can organize your employment history by experience and skills rather than time order. You can also use a functional resume if most of your experience comes from different short-term jobs or contract work. Okay? If you click, go back. You might have already clicked it before. Yeah, okay. You can also include your work history, but in a functional resume, it is grouped together and de-emphasized. Hiring managers will focus on the experience and skills you can bring to the position rather than your work history, including any gaps that you might have. Now to the next. No matter which resume format you choose, you should include any continuing education or training you've taken part in. This can include additional coursework at an Institute of Higher Learning, earning a certificate online, or completing workshops like this one. Just be sure that including it will add value to your resume. If it relates to the position you're applying for, then put it in your resume. You can add these as a subsection of the education section of your resume, like the one on screen. Or if the resume is too long, you could create a new section called professional development or something similar. Include just the basic details for each course or program you've completed: the name of the sponsoring school or organization, the title of the course or program, and the date of completion. You could discuss more of what you learned during the interview. You can easily add to this section anytime you complete a new course or earn a new certificate. Next slide. Now let's talk about the third strategy. Maybe you have many things to include in your resume, but don't know which ones to emphasize. How do you make those connections and show the employer that you're right for the job? By using specific examples and measurable details in the descriptions of your work experience to show what you've achieved and accomplished. Next slide. So this is called showing impact. What specifically have you done and how it has impacted your coworkers, your team, or the company? Lots of people will have words like innovative, organized, efficient, leader, and effective communicator on their resumes. But how can you show these qualities instead of just using these phrases? One way is to use specific examples from your previous experience. Describe specific projects you've worked on, improvements you've made, processes you developed, or goals you attained. Describe the quality of the work you've done in the past and show how it relates to what you could provide to the employer at a new job. The second way is to use measurable details whenever possible to quantify the work you did. For example, you might say that you increased sales at your current job, but what does that mean? Did you increase sales from 1 widget to 2 widgets per month? Or from 1 widget to 1 million widgets? Show your impact in numbers whenever possible. This is also a great place to add any awards or recognition you have received. These show how other people have viewed your accomplishments. Next slide. Now let's look into practice with another challenge. I'm going to show you examples of work experience that you might include on your resume. For each, list the kinds of measurable details and specific examples you might include if this was your resume. For this resume, for the sales rep position, you might include descriptions like manage the team, train new employees, ran meetings effectively, or sold more than your sales target. But how much do these descriptions really make you stand out to employers? Think about how you can make these skill descriptions more tangible using specific examples and measurable details. You could try rewriting at least one of these descriptions yourself on a piece of paper or a digital document. It's okay to make up the examples and details for now, okay? So you can put that in the chat. Anyone want to share? We're looking at thinking about how to make these descriptions more specific. That's on the presentation. Like what else can you do with the bullets? Manage team. Can you get more specific with that? Or like how did you run meetings effectively? That's a good one, Joy. You can click now. Another good one. Yes. Good job. I'm getting some good answers. Managed team of 13 employees who process 500 plus credit cards. Yes, very detailed. But you're seeing what I'm saying with specific descriptions. Because now you're giving the how. Ran meetings effectively, considering schedules for team leads and shareholders. Good ones. You can click now. Okay, here's just one example of what your resume might look like once you've added those measurable details. So a lot of you had put on there giving numbers. That's great. Instead of manage team, you might say manage the team of 8 employees from new hires to 15-year company members. You might say that you train 15 employees in 2 years. You might specify that you ran weekly team meetings and that 20 people typically attended, you know? You can also include details about what those meetings were usually about. So you could get in depth with that. And you can be specific about the sales targets you exceeded. Exceeding them by 0.5% is very different from exceeding them by 20%. Adding specific examples and measurable details gives employers an idea of just how valuable you will be as an employee. Use these numbers whenever possible to fully showcase your accomplishments. Okay, next page. Okay, so let's try another example, this time with the volunteer experience. How would you make these skill descriptions more specific? Using examples and measurable details. It's okay to make up the examples and details for now. So just like the previous slide, how would you add to these? Does anyone want to share theirs? Okay, that's a good one, Maria. Okay, you can click. So here are some ways you might rewrite the description of your volunteer experience to give hiring managers a better perception of your work. You served meals to over 200 residents, okay, and did that for 6 months every week. You've also raised $2,000 from local businesses and prepared 200 pounds of food. Your effort is much easier for a hiring manager to imagine here than if you just write organized holiday events. Okay. Next slide. Okay, you could also apply specific examples and measurable details to a resume if you're shifting your career path within your industry or starting an entirely new career path. More than likely, you'll be able to find some transferable skills. These skills that you've acquired in one area that are relevant, these are skills that you've acquired in one area that are relevant to an entirely different area. Organization, communication, and problem solving are all examples of those transferable skills that are vital to just about any profession. In your resume, you can make a case that even if you haven't worked in the industry before, you've already developed those skills in the field and shown success in the kinds of skills and tasks that are needed for that job. Let's say you decide to pursue a career in IT, starting as a support technician. Maybe you have experience working in the service industry for a beauty salon. Think about which skills you use in your job that you can include in your resume to show that you have some qualifications despite having no IT experience. You had to manage your daily tasks, which shows that you can plan and organize a schedule. You dealt with customers all day long who all had different needs. So active listening and multitasking are your skill set. And if you had any managerial responsibilities, even if you did not have the title of manager, then you might mention leadership skills such as the ability to motivate others and complete shared skills. When you add these skills to your resume, include as many specific and measurable details as possible to emphasize how your previous profession can easily translate to your new one. As you write about your skills, also use a job posting for the new career you're pursuing to see what language it uses to describe the job responsibilities. So if the posting talks about client work, or you referred to the people who visited your salon as customers, use clients in your resume instead. This will demonstrate to hiring managers that not only you possess transferable skills, but you also understand how they specifically relate to the new position. The example in this slide shows a few examples. So as you can see, for the cosmetologist position. Next slide. So now we've learned about professional formatting, highlighting skills and accomplishments, and citing examples and measurable details to really make those accomplishments shine. So now our last strategy is to tailor your resume for each job that you're applying to. Next slide. Earlier, we discussed how businesses use screening or applicant tracking software to narrow the pile of possible candidates before a manager even looks at them. These computer programs scan the resumes for keywords that are in the job description. If those words don't appear often enough in the resume, or if the skills you highlight don't match the job description, the program determines that the person is not a good candidate for the position. Even if the employer is not using applicant tracking software, people can also tend to scan resumes for keywords. You'll be most successful when your resume matches the language of a job description. When you create a resume for a particular job, you should incorporate as many of the keywords in your past experience and work history as possible. When you describe your past experience, using the same terms the employer used, and use the same terms the employer used in the job description, you'll have a better chance of passing screening software if companies are using it. You'll stand out more to the hiring manager. You'll show also that you paid close attention to the qualities that they want in a candidate. Next slide. So let's take a moment to complete one more challenge. Reread the job description that we used earlier, okay? Jot down a few words from the job description that you would incorporate into your resume if you're applying for this position. One tip, pay attention to the action verbs, industry phrases, and other important terms that you see in the job description too. What will you actually be doing if you get the job? Include specific experiences that illustrate how you did this task in previous jobs. Also, look at the characteristics or skills that I mentioned in the description. Take 1 minute to review this job description and think of words you'll incorporate into your resume. Next slide. So what are some of the words you would use to incorporate in your resume? Any volunteers on what they would use? Right. Successful, responsible, motivated. Yes, highlight those soft skills. Anyone else? Okay, so the characteristics, like Joy said, responsible, motivated. We've identified some words that you could use in your own resume to describe your experience. These include identifying sales needs and delivering sales presentations. Incorporate those same words when you describe your own experience to show that you've done these tasks before and will be successful at doing them for this employer. The action words that are in the job description can help you shape the skills list for each job and to include measurable details from your past work experiences. They also help your resume sound professional without sounding forced. Next slide. Okay, so let's review these 4 strategies. In the workshop, we began looking at sample resumes to see what hiring managers look for. Then we examined 4 strategies for improving our own resume. So choose a professional format, okay? Try to achieve balance so your resume doesn't look too crowded, busy, or empty. Use a template to help with the formatting. And we've provided a link for that. Next, we highlighted skills and accomplishments. Include only your most relevant and recent experiences. We also cited specific examples and measurable details, showing your achievement and skills rather than just mentioning them. And also tailoring your resume to the job description, using the words from the job description to impress resume screening programs and employers. So you can use these strategies as a checklist for revising your own resume. Next slide. There are many other digital tools that can help you with the job application process as well. We've already mentioned resume templates to lighten the lift of designing a professional looking resume. Here's another way to use digital tools to help you organize information for your resume. Use a digital document to keep a running list of all the things you might consider under work experience. That might include part-time and full-time jobs, side work you do around the neighborhood, clubs or organizations you participate in, volunteer work, and many other things. You can update a digital document at any time from any device that is connected to the internet. That way, when you go to write or update your resume, you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about what you did in the past. You'll have a complete list to pull from. Next slide. Another digital tool to use is a digital spreadsheet to track your application process. This slide shows a Google Sheets spreadsheet. As you apply to different jobs or find out about positions you would like to apply to, you can track those in a spreadsheet. The job search plan on this screen shows a job search plan that can help you compare different positions, companies, and salaries. If you're applying to many jobs, you can also use a spreadsheet like this to keep track of the different versions of your resume and to track the status of each application. For example, you can add a list for have not started the application, submitted, scheduled interview, sent thank you note to remind yourself where you are with each application and what tasks you still need to complete. Next slide. Finally, you can create a digital portfolio in Google Slides like the one shown on this slide for photography and sound engineering. When you build these projects on Google Docs, Sheets, or Slides, you can access them from any device with Google applications. They save automatically, so you don't have to worry about losing your work, even if your computer crashes. And you can share the projects to collaborate from anywhere. Next slide. At this point, we've given you several strategies and digital tips. So before we go, let's talk about the next steps. Here are a few ways to move forward with all the information you learned today. Review possible resume templates in the Google Docs template gallery. Choose one that suits your industry, experience, and style. Examine your current resume and find places to include specific examples and measurable details. Create a running list of experiences that you use to tailor your resume. Next slide. Now let's review some of the free resources from Google. If you enjoy video lessons, subscribe with the Grow with Google YouTube channel at youtube.com/Google Career Certificates. This channel publishes new videos regularly, covering topics that can help you grow your career, your skills and careers. Next slide. And if you're looking to start a new career and land a competitively paid job or build skills to grow in your career, check out Google Career Certificates. Google Career Certificates can give you a path to in-demand jobs with top employers that are currently hiring. You can earn a certificate and prepare for a new career in a high-growth field in under 6 months, even if you don't have relevant experience. Learn at your own pace and complete the online program on your own terms. Certificates are available for data analytics, advanced data analytics, business intelligence, digital marketing and e-commerce, IT support, IT automation with Python, user experience design, project management, and cybersecurity. And you could get started with those on grow.google/certificates. Next slide. And then Grow with Google has an initiative to help people prepare for work, find jobs, and grow their businesses. Job seekers can grow their skills in order to find new jobs and advance their careers. Teachers can learn how to put the latest technology to work inside and outside of the classroom. Small business owners can build their online presence and find new customers. Startups can learn how to get their ideas the exposure they need to succeed. Developers can sharpen their current skills and master new ones. To learn more, you can visit them at google.com/grow. Next slide. And thank you so much for attending today's workshop. We truly value your feedback. If you would like to take a moment to share your thoughts, you could also put that in the chat. You could also access the survey at g.co/grow/feedback, or you can use the QR code on this slide with your mobile phone. And click on the banner that appears to access the survey. And the link is also provided in the chat. And thank you again from Dress for Success, that is collaborating with Google Grow with Google. Thank you, Ms. Carol. And we will be emailing this workshop today to the emails to all that registered.